The sky above Prime was burning. Great ships hung in the darkness of space, raining fire upon the cities below. Millions of people ran through the streets, screaming, searching for shelter that did not exist. Their world was dying, and no one was coming to save them. Ambassador stood at the observation window of Orbital Station 7. She was old for her kind, with pale blue skin that had faded to almost white over the long years. Her large, dark eyes watched the destruction below, and her thin hands trembled against the cold glass. 3 months ago, the Horde had appeared at the edge of their system. 7,000 warships, black and terrible, moving like a swarm of hungry insects. They had sent messages to the Galactic Union, begging for help. The Union had sent a fleet of 500 ships. The battle lasted 2 days. The Union fleet was destroyed. Now there was nothing between thee and the complete destruction of her people. The raiders did not want territory or resources. They wanted only to consume, to burn, to destroy. It was their nature. It was all they knew. "Ambassador," said a young officer behind her, his voice was shaking. "We have lost contact with the southern continent. The population centers there are gone." Closed her eyes. 60 million people lived on the southern continent. 60 million voices, silenced in a single night. "How many evacuation ships have launched?" she asked. 47, Ambassador. They carry perhaps 200,000 survivors. 200,000, out of 4 billion. Turned from the window, her decision was already made. It had been made the moment she watched the Union fleet burn. "Open a channel," she said. "All frequencies, maximum power, send the signal everywhere." The young officer's eyes went wide. "Ambassador, that violates Union protocol. The signal will reach uncharted space, primitive sectors. We do not know who might receive it." "I know exactly what I am doing," replied. Her voice was calm, but there was iron beneath it. "Our own people cannot save us. The Union cannot save us. If there is anyone in this universe willing to help, I will find them. Open the channel." The officer hesitated for only a moment. Then he nodded and turned to his console. The message was simple. It gave their location, described their enemy, and begged for assistance. Recorded it herself, her voice steady despite the tears running down her face. Then she sent it into the void, hopping against hope that someone would hear. The signal traveled outward at the speed of light, passing through empty systems and dead worlds. It crossed the borders of known space and entered the uncharted regions that the Galactic Union had never bothered to explore. And after traveling for several hours, it reached a small yellow star with 8 planets. The third planet was called Earth. Admiral Park was drinking coffee in his office aboard the UES Indomitable when the alert came. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face that showed the weight of many years. He had spent his entire life preparing for a war that never came. Earth had built a mighty fleet, expecting enemies that never appeared. Sometimes he wondered if all those ships and soldiers would simply rust away, never knowing their purpose. The communications officer appeared at his door, her face pale. "Admiral, we have received something strange. A signal from deep space. It appears to be a distress call." Park set down his coffee. "Show me." The message played on his screen. The language was alien, but the translation software did its work. Park watched the blue-skinned woman speak, saw the fear in her large eyes, heard the desperation in her voice. Behind her, through a window, he could see a planet burning. "How far?" he asked. "Approximately 47 light-years, sir. With our current drive technology, the fleet could reach them in 6 hours." Park was silent for a long moment. Humanity had never made contact with alien life. They had found evidence of other civilizations, detected signals from far away, but they had never met another species face to face. The Galactic Union apparently did not consider Earth worth noticing. They were primitives, after all. Savages who had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. But primitives or not, Park had 230 warships under his command. Ships built with human stubbornness and human paranoia, designed to fight enemies that might be stronger, faster, and more advanced. Ships crewed by men and women who had trained their entire lives for battle. He picked up his communicator. "Captain, report to my office immediately." Captain arrived within minutes. She was younger than Park, with sharp eyes and black hair cut short for practicality. She had been his second in command for 5 years, and he trusted her judgment completely. Park played the message for her. When it ended, she looked at him with an expression he had never seen before. "They are asking for help," she said quietly. "Yes." "From anyone who can hear them." "Yes." Straightened her shoulders. "Then we answer, Admiral. That is what we do." Park nodded slowly. He had known she would say that. He had known because he felt the same thing in his own heart. Somewhere out there, people were dying. They had called for help, and Earth had the power to answer. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Park. Prepare for immediate departure. We have received a distress call from an alien civilization under attack. We are going to help them. Battle stations. We jump in 1 hour." Across 230 ships, men and women ran to their posts. Hearts pounded. Hands checked weapons and systems. Fear and excitement mixed together in every chest. Humanity was going to war. Ambassador had not slept in 3 days. She sat in the command center of Orbital Station 7, watching the tactical display with empty eyes. The fleet moved slowly around the planet, their ships descending one by one to continue their harvest of destruction. There was no hurry for them. They had all the time in the universe. The last evacuation ships had left hours ago, carrying the final survivors who could escape. Perhaps 500,000 would survive the destruction of their 500,000 out of 4 billion. It was not victory. It was barely even survival. "Ambassador," said the young officer at the sensor station. His voice sounded strange. "I am detecting something." Did not look up. "More ships." "No, Ambassador. These signatures are different. They are coming from deep space, from the direction of the uncharted sectors." Now raised her head. Her hearts began to beat faster. "How many?" The officer's hands moved across his console and his face went pale. "Over 200, Ambassador. They are moving very fast. They will arrive in less than 1 minute." Stood from her chair. It was impossible. No one in the uncharted sectors had faster-than-light technology. No one there could have received her signal and responded so quickly. Unless... Space tore open. 230 ships burst from subspace in perfect formation, arranged in a pattern that spoke of military discipline and careful planning. They were ugly ships by galactic standards. No smooth curves or elegant designs. They were angular, heavy, covered in thick armor plates and bristling with weapons. They looked like they had been built by creatures who expected to be attacked and had decided to hit back twice as hard. The command center erupted in chaos. Officers shouted at each other, trying to identify the unknown vessels. The fleet, surprised by the sudden arrival, began to turn their ships toward the newcomers. Then a voice came through the communication system. It was deep and calm, speaking in a language that the translation software struggled to process. "This is Admiral Park of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Please send us information about enemy positions and civilian evacuation routes." Legs nearly gave out beneath her. She grabbed the edge of a console to keep herself standing. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The young officer turned to her with wide eyes. "Ambassador, these ships, they are from the primitive world, from the planet called Earth." Earth, the small blue world in the Sol system that the Galactic Union had dismissed as unimportant. The planet of savages who had only recently discovered space travel. They had come. They had actually come. Found her voice. Open a channel to their flagship. The connection established, and she found herself looking at a human face for the first time. Admiral Park was older than she expected, with gray hair and dark eyes that held both kindness and steel. Behind him, she could see a bridge full of humans working at their stations, preparing for battle. Admiral Park said, her voice trembling, "I am ambassador of the people. You actually came." Park nodded. "You asked for help, we heard you. Now please, Ambassador, we need tactical information. How many enemy ships? What are their weapon systems? Where are your remaining civilians?" Struggled to process his words. "Admiral, the Horde has nearly 7,000 warships. Your fleet is only 200. You cannot possibly." "Ambassador," Park's voice was gentle but firm. "We did not come here to count odds. We came here to fight. Please give us the information we need." Aboard the command ship, Warlord watched the unknown vessels with curiosity. He was massive, even by standards, with thick gray skin and 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. He had led the Horde for 30 years and destroyed dozens of civilizations. Nothing surprised him anymore. "What are they?" he asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, Warlord. The ships match no design in our records. They appear to come from the uncharted sectors." Made a sound of amusement. Primitives, then, coming to save their dying friends. How touching. He waved one of his massive hands. "Send 300 ships to destroy them. This will be quick." 300 warships turned toward the human fleet. They were confident. They had crushed the Galactic Union's best ships without difficulty. What could these crude vessels possibly do against them? On the bridge of the UES Indomitable, Admiral Park watched the enemy ships approach. His face showed no fear. "Captain," he said calmly, "what is the status of the fleet?" Captain checked her console. "All ships report ready, Admiral. Weapons charged, shields at full power. The crews are eager." Park allowed himself a small smile. "Then let us show these raiders what humanity can do. All ships, weapons free, fire at will." The human fleet opened fire. In the command center of Orbital Station 7, Ambassador watched her tactical display with disbelief. The human ships were not retreating or trying to negotiate. They were charging directly into the formation, their weapons blazing. And the ships were exploding. The humans used weapons that the galaxy had abandoned centuries ago. Kinetic rounds. Solid metal accelerated to incredible speeds. While every other civilization had switched to energy weapons, humans had perfected the ancient art of throwing things very hard. And shields, designed to stop energy beams, shattered like glass under the impacts. In the first 10 minutes, 27 ships were destroyed. The humans lost 2. Sank into her chair, her eyes fixed on the display. For the first time in 3 months, she felt something she had forgotten existed. Hope. Lieutenant Myra had trained for battle her entire adult life. From the age of 18, she had studied weapons systems, practiced targeting drills, and prepared herself for a war that everyone said would never come. Now, at 32, she sat at her station aboard the UES Hammer, and her hands moved across the controls with perfect calm. "Kinetic rounds loaded," she announced. "Target acquired, firing." The ship shuddered as massive metal projectiles launched from its guns. Across the void of space, a cruiser attempted to evade, but the rounds were too fast. They struck the enemy shields and punched through like needles through paper. The cruiser broke apart in a silent explosion. "Target destroyed," Myra said. "Acquiring next target." She did not think about the lives she was ending. She did not think about the families of the crews. She thought only about her training and about the burning planet below, where billions of innocent people had already died. The enemy had chosen to be here. The enemy had chosen to kill. Now the enemy would face the consequences. This was how humans fought, not with elegance or restraint, with cold, calculated fury. Across the battlefield, they were learning a terrible lesson. For centuries, galactic warfare had followed certain rules. Ships engaged at long range. Shields absorbed damage. When one side gained an advantage, the other retreated to fight another day. It was civilized, it was predictable, it was safe. Humans did not follow these rules. The Earth fleet drove into the heart of the formation like a spear. They did not maintain safe distances. They closed to ranges that other species considered suicidal, where their kinetic weapons could do maximum damage. And when their ships were damaged, they did not retreat. Captain commanded the UES Valkyrie from its bridge, her voice steady as damage reports came in from every section. Hull breach on Deck 7. Seal it. Fire Control Station 3 is down. Reroute to backup. Forward shields at 40%. Keep fighting. A destroyer appeared directly ahead, its weapons charging for a killing shot. Did not hesitate. All forward guns, concentrate fire. Ram them if we have to. The Valkyrie's guns roared. The destroyer's shields flickered and died. The enemy ship tried to turn away, but it was too slow. The Valkyrie's rounds tore through its hull, and the destroyer exploded into fragments that scattered against the human ship's armor. Next target ordered. On the command ship, Warlord was no longer amused. He stood before his tactical display, his 4 hands clenched into fists, watching his fleet being torn apart by primitives. "This is impossible," he growled. "They are outnumbered 30-1. Why are they not retreating?" His tactical officer had no answer. None of them did. In all their years of raiding and conquest, they had never faced an enemy like this. Civilized species negotiated when they were outmatched. They surrendered to preserve lives. They accepted defeat with grace and dignity. These humans accepted nothing. "Send 500 more ships," commanded. "Surround them, crush them with numbers." The order went out and 500 warships turned toward the battle. But as they approached, the human fleet shifted formation. They split into smaller groups, each one targeting a different section of the force. It was a tactic that required perfect coordination and absolute trust between captains. The humans had both. Admiral Park watched the battle unfold from the Indomitable's bridge. His face was calm, but his mind was working constantly, analyzing every movement, predicting every response. He had studied military history his entire life. He knew the tactics of Alexander, of Hannibal, of Nelson, and he understood that victory came not from superior numbers, but from superior will. "Signal the 7th Squadron," he ordered. "Have them flank the enemy carrier group. We take out their support ships first." The 7th Squadron, led by Commander on the UES Steadfast, acknowledged the order. 20 ships turned as one, their engines burning bright, and drove toward the carriers that hung back from the main battle. Was a small woman with fierce eyes and a reputation for fearlessness. Her crew trusted her completely, and she trusted them in return. Together, they had trained for years in simulations and exercises. Now, finally, they faced a real enemy. "All hands," she announced over the ship's intercom. "We are engaging enemy carriers. These ships supply the fleet with fighters and ammunition. If we destroy them, the enemy loses their advantage. Fight hard, fight smart, make Earth proud." The 7th Squadron hit the carrier group like a hammer. The carriers were large and slow, designed for support rather than combat. Their escort ships tried to protect them, but the humans were too fast, too aggressive. One by one, the carriers began to burn. Back in the main battle, they were starting to panic. Ships that had never known fear were now trying to retreat, to escape the relentless human assault. But the Earth fleet gave them no opportunity. Every retreating ship was pursued. Every gap in the formation was exploited. By the end of the first day, they had lost over 400 ships. The humans had lost 31. On Orbital Station 7, Ambassador watched the battle with tears streaming down her face. She had seen the Galactic Union's finest fleet destroyed in hours. She had believed that nothing could stop the Horde. She had been wrong. The humans were not just fighting, they were winning. 3 days had passed since the human fleet arrived at Prime. 3 days of constant battle, of burning ships and dying crews, of victories won through blood and sacrifice. And now, finally, the tide had turned completely. The horde was retreating. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display. The enemy fleet, once 7,000 strong, had been reduced to less than half that number. They were pulling back, abandoning the system, fleeing into deep space. "Admiral," said Captain, "the enemy is in full retreat. Should we hold position and defend the evacuation efforts?" Park was silent for a long moment. Behind his calm expression, a battle raged in his mind. Part of him wanted to stop, to rest, to tend to the wounded and honor the dead. His fleet had lost 41 ships. Over 3,000 men and women had given their lives. They had done enough. But another part of him, the part that had studied history and understood the nature of evil, knew that this was not over. "If we let them go," he said quietly, "they will return. They will rebuild their forces and come back to finish what they started. They will never be safe. No one will be safe." Nodded slowly, she understood. "Then we pursue." Park opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is the Admiral. The enemy is retreating, but our mission is not complete. We will divide our forces. The damaged ships and half our strength will remain here to protect evacuation operations. The rest of us will pursue thee and destroy them completely. This will not be easy. Many of us will not return. But if we do this, if we finish this fight, the horde will never threaten anyone again." He paused. "I will not order anyone to follow me. This must be a choice, volunteers only." Every single ship volunteered. Ambassador contacted the Indomitable minutes later. Her face showed confusion and concern. "Admiral Park, I do not understand. You have won. Why are you chasing them? Your ships are damaged. Your people are exhausted. You have done more than anyone could ask." Park met her eyes through the screen. "Ambassador, the people who burned your cities, who killed your families, they are still out there. If we stop now, they will hurt someone else. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but eventually they will find another planet, another people, and they will do this again. We cannot allow that." Shook her head slowly. "You would risk more of your people's lives for species you have never met, for planets you do not know." "Yes," Park said simply, "that is who we are." The pursuit began that same day. 120 human ships chased the fleeing fleet across the void of space. It was a brutal hunt, lasting 9 days, fought in the darkness between stars where no help would come if they failed. They tried to set traps, tried to ambush their pursuers, but the humans were relentless. Commander led the vanguard aboard the UES Steadfast. Her ship had taken heavy damage in the initial battle. 3 decks were open to space. A quarter of her crew was in the medical bay. The engines were running at 60%. None of it mattered. "Status report," she ordered. Her first officer, Lieutenant Han, checked his console. His face was pale with exhaustion, but his voice was steady. 17 enemy ships detected, Commander. They appear to be protecting a larger vessel. Based on the energy signatures, it might be their command ship." Felt her heart beat faster. "The Warlord." "Most likely, Commander." She allowed herself a small, fierce smile. "All ships form up on my position. We take the command ship first. Cut off the head and the body dies." The 17 human ships in her group moved into attack formation. They were all damaged, all tired, all running low on ammunition. But they moved with purpose and unity, like a pack of wolves closing in on their prey. Warlord stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human ships approach. His fleet had been destroyed. His warriors had been scattered. Everything he had built over 30 years was crumbling around him. "We should surrender," said his tactical officer. "Perhaps they will show mercy." Turned his massive head and stared at the officer with contempt. "The do not surrender. We fight to the death. Prepare all weapons. We will take as many of them with us as possible." The final battle was short but violent. The human ships swarmed the flagship, pouring fire into its shields from every direction. They fought back with desperate fury, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Lieutenant Myra, aboard the UES Hammer, fired the shot that ended it. A kinetic round, traveling at incredible speed, punched through the flagship's weakened shields and struck its reactor core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire ship tore itself apart in a massive explosion that lit up the darkness of space. Warlord was dead. The Horde was broken. When the surviving human ships finally returned to Prime, they found the waiting for them. Thousands of survivors had gathered at the orbital stations, watching the battered fleet emerge from subspace. And when they saw the human ships, damaged but victorious, they began to weep. Ambassador was the first to greet Commander as she stepped off her ship. The woman looked at the exhausted human commander with an expression of wonder. "You came back," whispered. Nodded slowly. "We always do." Admiral Park arrived shortly after, his face showing the weight of everything that had happened. He had lost more ships in the pursuit, more good people who would never see home again. The cost had been terrible. But when he looked down at the planet below, where evacuation ships were landing to begin the long process of rebuilding, he knew it had been worth it. They were alive, they were gone, and humanity had proven something to the galaxy that would never be forgotten. When someone called for help, Earth answered. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. In every system, on every world, beings of all species stopped what they were doing to listen. The Horde, the terror of the Outer Rim, the destroyers of civilizations, had been broken, and they had been broken by a species no one had ever heard of. Humans from a small blue planet called Earth. On the capital world of the Galactic Union, the Great Council Chamber filled with representatives from 100 species. They had gathered to hear the testimony of Ambassador, who had traveled across the stars to deliver her report in person. The chamber fell silent as she took her place at the speaking platform. Her blue skin was pale, and her dark eyes still carried the shadows of everything she had witnessed. But her voice was strong and clear. "I am here to tell you about the humans of Earth," she began. "I am here to tell you that everything we believed about them was wrong." She told them everything. The desperate signal sent into the void, the arrival of the human fleet appearing from nowhere like warriors from an ancient legend, the battle that followed, where 200 ships fought against 7,001, the pursuit across the stars, the final destruction of the command ship, the long journey home. When she finished, the chamber was completely silent. Then Council member, an ancient being whose species had been part of the Union for 10,000 years, spoke. "Ambassador, you are saying that these humans came to your aid without any promise of reward. They lost thousands of their people and dozens of their ships, and they asked for nothing in return." Nodded. "That is correct, Council member. When I asked Admiral Park why they had come, he seemed confused by the question. He said that we asked for help and they could help, so what else would they do?" Murmurs spread through the chamber. This was not how the galaxy worked. Species helped each other for advantage, for resources, for political power. No one sacrificed so much for strangers. "And what do they want now?" asked another council member, a tall being with silver scales. "Surely they expect something, territory, trade agreements, a seat on this council." Shook her head slowly. "I asked Admiral Park this question before I left Prime. He gave me a list of 3 things the humans want from the Galactic Union." She activated her data pad and projected the list for all to see. First, they want coordinates of any other systems currently under attack by hostile forces. Second, they want to establish communication channels so they can receive future distress calls more quickly. Third, they want to know if anyone else needs help. The chamber erupted. Council members shouted at each other, debating what this meant, whether it was some kind of trick, whether the humans were really as selfless as they appeared. raised one ancient hand and called for silence. "Ambassador," the old being said, "in all my years I have never heard of a species like this. Are you certain they have no hidden motives?" Thought about the question for a long moment. She thought about Admiral Park and his tired eyes, about Captain and her fierce determination, about Commander and the crew of the Steadfast who had chased thee across the stars with a broken ship. "Council member," she said finally, "I watched humans die for my people. I watched them bleed and suffer and sacrifice everything they had. And when it was over, when they had won, they did not celebrate. They held memorial services for their dead. They wept for the friends they had lost. And then they asked me if there was anything else they could do to help." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I do not believe they have hidden motives. I believe they are exactly what they appear to be. They are warriors who fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. They are protectors who answer when others call for help. And I believe the galaxy will never be the same now that they are here." On Earth, Admiral Park attended the first of 41 memorial services. He stood before rows of empty chairs, each one representing a crew member who would never come home. Families sat before him, their faces showing grief and pride in equal measure. "We lost many good people in this war," Park said, his voice rough with emotion. "Lieutenant, who died defending the medical ship Hope. Ensign Bay, who stayed at his post until his ship was destroyed. Commander O, who led her squadron into the heart of the enemy fleet and never came back." He read every name, every single one. It took hours, but he did not stop, did not rest, until every fallen warrior had been honored. Captain stood beside him through it all. When the final name was read, she stepped forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. "They knew the risks," she said quietly. "They chose to go anyway. They chose to help." Park nodded slowly. "And we will remember them always." 3 months later, a formal message arrived from the Galactic Union. They had voted unanimously to invite humanity to join the Council. They offered trade agreements, technology sharing, and full recognition as a spacefaring civilization. The Earth government accepted. But they added a condition of their own. Earth would join the Union, would participate in its politics and trade and culture. But they would also maintain their own fleet, their own military, separate from Union command. And if anyone, anywhere in the galaxy, sent a distress call into the void, Earth would answer. The Union agreed. In the years that followed, human ships became a familiar sight across the galaxy. They patrolled the borders, responded to emergencies, and stood guard against any threat that emerged. Other species joined them, inspired by their example, forming a new kind of alliance based not on profit or power, but on the simple idea that people should help each other. Ambassador returned to Prime and helped her people rebuild. A statue was erected in the main square of the new capital, showing a human hand reaching down to lift her from the ruins. The inscription beneath it was simple. "They heard us, they came, they saved us." And far away, on a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star, humanity looked up at the night sky with new eyes. They had found their purpose. They had discovered why they were here. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, full of terrors and wonders beyond imagination. And whenever someone called for help, whenever someone needed a protector, whenever darkness threatened to consume the innocent, humanity would be there. Because that was who they were. That was who they had always been.